Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, 4 nerds, by nerds, hanging out with all these nerds.
Ted.
Nathan Nerdarch.
Ryan.
And today we discuss 3 ways to hit them harder.
Hey guys, jump down to the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the News Letter. It's a great way to get gaming tips as well as learn how to game with us.
So when building a damage dealing character, there's several categories we're going to look at, right? We're going to look at
Class, spells, feats.
Yeah, different options that are going to give us the best average damage, essentially.
So where do we want to go first?
You're going to either do that damage by hitting a lot of times or hitting hard, are kind of your options. You know, I think our front runners for class are going to be like Paladin, Barbarian, Battlemaster, Rogue. Characters that you get to put down a lot of dice.
Fighters, and I would even give an honorable mention to Monk because their flurry of blows, or even just their offhand attack, like they're never considered having an offhand attack, so they're always getting their maximum bonus to their damage dice.
Now, I will say level dip into Ranger, well, maybe not one level, but dipping into Ranger, you can work up to Colossus Slayer, which will just add a D8 to all your attacks.
Once something's injured.
Once something's injured.
If you were to go with a monk build, take 3 levels of Ranger, you could take a couple levels of Rogue for sneak attack. Now, granted, when you use you may have to make sure your monk weapon is lighter finesse in order to take advantage of your sneak attack.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because it lets you use your dex, but it's not technically a finesse weapon.
It is not. So you'd have to use the appropriate weapon.
So no Kensai great sorting.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Short sword though is very much a viable option.
Right, and it doesn't matter because as your monk level goes up, so does the damage on the die.
Barbarian gets you rage damage. Mm-hmm. So whenever if you're fighting as a strength build, adding in Barbarian rage is always a beneficial thing.
Yeah, well, there's also the thing with Barbarian Rogue makes an interesting combination because you can always reckless attack and get sneak attack. That being said, you have to use a lighter finesse weapon, but you can still use it with your strength.
Right, it just has to hit that classification.
Now, Fighter does present a number of options, with all of the different fighting styles that can increase your damage, be it the Great Weapon Fighter, the Duelist, or the 2-Weapon Fighter, all give you in some way, shape, or form the ability to do better damage.
Yeah. And then also the feature going to second level of Action Surge, a whole nother slew of attacks. Doubling your attacks is the best way to increase your average damage. So Fighter Barbarian is a very strong and viable combination in that instance.
And sticking with Fighter, it doesn't really matter which archetype you use out of the player's handbook, because all of them do in some way, shape, or form add to that damage pool. It's just a matter of how you want to get there.
Yeah. Go ahead with the Battlemaster.
The Battlemaster, they're just going to give you straight up dice and
some cool effects.
And
right?
cool effects, depending upon which way you want to actually go with it. If you go Champion, increasing your crit range by 5% and eventually up to a total of 10%, critting more often is just going to allow you to throw more dice on the table. And if you go Eldritch Knight, there's a handful of different spells that you can wind up eventually getting that are, again, helpful.
Going to maximize that damage curve average.
Well, not only that, too, eventually you get War Magic, which is letting you cast cantrips and an attack, or letting you cast a full-on spell and attack. And then you can combine that with things like Haste or Fireball and Action Surge. So, yeah, they can throw around a lot of damage that way.
And even the Skag offers some pretty interesting spells that allow you to do a cantrip and have a weapon attack. So at those early levels, you're getting more than your standard attacks.
Yeah. The other thing I would pull back to talk about the monk again is the open hand, the effects that you can initiate on your enemies. Very similar sort of bag of tools that like a Battlemaster can get. Anytime you can knock your opponent prone, it then becomes advantage to your follow-up attacks, which the Battlemaster gets to do that in some ways and instances, and the monk, you get it on one of your flurry of blows attacks, so then your next one's going to be made an advantage because then they're knocked prone if they fail that saving throw.
Correct.
Feats is next in the book, so we might as well go to feats.
All right, so feats, there's a number of options, and it really depends upon what kind of attacker you are, whether you're going strength or whether you're going dex or whether you're looking at ranged versus melee. So you always want to take those feats that allow you to sack out the 5 for the plus 10 damage. So that's Great Weapon Master or Sharpshooter.
Correct. We also have Martial Adept, which that's going to get you another die and some of those cool maneuvers we talked about.
So whether you're actually a battle master or whether you chosen to not go battle master but you still want to get access to those, it's still a great choice.
Yeah, the Battle Master does get maximum effect out of it because the dice that they get to roll are going to be that much better. So that's a good way to go.
We kind of missed one when we were talking about classes. And it's the one that probably does some of the most damage.
What's that?
Paladin. Paladin and Smites.
Yeah, that's true. Smite is very significant, especially if you happen to crit, because those dice are also going to get multiplied on the crit. And, like, sure, you can say that paladins sometimes cast spells, but we know that those spells are just there for them to sacrifice for smites.
Sort of, but when we get to spells, I'll double back to that.
Okay,
So the thing that is actually quite amusing is in earlier editions when you with third edition, when you smite, you chose, okay, I'm smiting with this attack, and then you rolled your attack roll. Now it's I make my attack roll, oh, I hit, okay, I'm going to smite.
The rogue gets that same thing too, because it is a limited resource to some extent. It's like, well, we want to actually let people get to use these things. So the rogue too, like you don't declare your sneak attack now, it's you hit and you decide, oh, that was a sneak attack.
So like I find it's interesting, and the dice do allow you to dictate that in 5th edition, but it's still something that it's like, that's a little odd. But now it's like, okay, well, I crit, well, I'm going to use my biggest smite I possibly can and slaughter this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
You know when it's going to be a really good hit.
You just know. It felt good.
Well, you're a paladin, so there's a little bit of
The divine inspiration there.
back to feats.
Back to feats.
So
there's a couple cool combinations you can do. One is Magic Initiate, which we'll get to that when we talk about spells, why that would be an obvious choice, but that works really well if you want to take Warlock. You can definitely juice things up with that. Then we have the combination of Polearm Master, which works for any of the fighting classes because it gives you an opportunity to use your reaction for an attack as well as giving you that bonus action as an attack. And again, like here's the thing, right? You're still using a heavy weapon when you do it. You're not trading your offhand for that bonus action attack. So if you're fighting with a pike or a halberd, you're still using that big weapon. You can use it every way you would use that big weapon. The upside is now as a bonus action, you just can attack for another die 4 plus your strength and whatever other modifiers you get.
Well, let's not forget Savage Attacker, because if you're just trying to roll a higher average damage, getting 2 pools of dice to work with is always a good way to do it.
And especially when we're considering if you were to have taken the Great Weapon fighting style, so that's re-rolling 1s and 2s when you drop your dice. Well, so you get 2 pools of dice, you re-roll those 1s and 2s, and you only get to use Savage Attacker once per turn. If you happen to crit in that turn with the weapon dice, you get to re-roll all those 1s and 2s. So you're with a great sword, you're looking at 4 die 6, re-rolling 1s and 2s. So you pick the better of those 2 pools. So I almost guarantee you that you're gonna up your damage output by some.
It's gonna go up.
Legitimate difference of magnitude, yeah.
We need a wizard with the mathematician tradition to figure that out for us.
Yeah, it's probably something like 1.5 times on average, I would guess.
You were talking about with the Polearm Master getting that offhand attack, essentially. So you could always go with just a dual weapon master and just use 2 different weapons, and the second attack can be you can use a bigger weapon in your offhand, and you then get your stat modifier to your damage.
Yeah, like 2 1d8 or d10 weapons, and you're getting, so if you're attacking with strength, which is most likely the case if you're going with 2 battle axes or something like that, so the extra +5 on each of those attacks is pretty nice.
Indeed.
Then there's Warcaster, which is a bit of an odd duck. It's very useful when you combine it with Eldritch Knight and the Polearm Master, because you're gonna get to use that reaction more often, and then you're gonna be able to use a spell instead. And there's several spells, cantrips, that actually go off of a weapon attack. Now the only downside is you really do still have to be 5 feet away from them in order to use Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade. But Lightning Lash is a range of 15 feet, and because you're holding that polearm and you have Warcaster, you could actually use that thing as your weapon focus or your spell focus. So you would still be able to use it.
So on to spells. We only have a few, and we've got Hunter's Mark, Hex, and if you're going with this fightery build, it takes a long time to get there, but if you stick with Eldritch Knight, you can eventually get Haste. And
There's another way, too. There's more. Wait. So circling back to Paladin, right? The Oath of Vengeance Paladin gets Hunter's Mark.
They do.
So they can increase their damage there all the time, and they can still smite and use that spell. They also have haste on their list. So generally, I would say as a paladin, you don't want to cast spells. You just want to use them as smites. But those are actually two very attractive spells for a paladin to use, especially because Hunter's Mark is going to last the whole combat, and you can constantly move it around. So I think over the length of a combat, especially if it's a longer one, that extra die 6 every time you hit something, that's going to add up to actually be more than smite damage.
Yeah, if one of your tenants is ass kicking, Oath of Vengeance is the way to go.
Yeah, I think that's actually a gross abuse that they gave haste to paladins.
No, not paladins. Oath of Vengeance paladins. It's much different.
That's even worse.
It's like the Charles Bronson of
It's
of
better than
paladins.
bad. It's good.
Yeah.
You're a spirit of vengeance. You have to run them down in order to enact your vengeance upon them.
I don't know. I'm certain there's people that'll argue with me in the comments. So
We'll argue with you right here. No need to wait.
So you had said that Magic Initiate, you were going to talk about that in the spells.
Yes, Magic Initiate, Warlock, you can take Hex, and then you have 2 cantrips to play with. So if you're going with a class that doesn't give you Hunter's Mark, like Ranger or Oath of Vengeance Paladin, you can go with if you're a different kind of Paladin, Charisma Caster, you could then go Warlock, also a Charisma Caster, and then get your Hex instead of...
Oh, go finish.
You can get your Hex instead of, and then you would also have access to a couple cantrips. You can take Eldritch Blast, and if you're doing it as a paladin, it's not going to hurt you because you're going to have a good charisma. Or you can just take a couple cantrips to add flavor to your character.
Could also go with either Battle Master or Champion and choose Wizard. There's not a huge amount of damage-dealing wizard spells that you would want to go with if you're not planning to go that route, but you could take your spell as Shield, offering a bit of defensive capabilities, and you could take your Green Flame Blade and your Booming Blade as your cantrips.
Yeah, that would absolutely work.
Actually, better still, no, your first level spell is Find Familiar. So this way, it can always give you advantage to your attacks. Because we're going strictly offense with this build. Offense wins games.
So your Find Familiar is just to help her to give you advantage?
Yeah, exactly. And same thing if you were to do a rogue build, you can do that as well.
You're just going to have to cast that spell often because as your DM gets annoyed by it, and his first attack is always just to hack it down.
Yeah.
25 gold every time you want to cast it, though.
It's a war of attrition.
Does that cover it?
Absolutely not. But you know where we're going to find out what we missed? Down in the comments below. While you guys are at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can tweet at us at Nerdarchy.
You can check out the articles over at nerdarchy.com.
You can also find us over on Instagram.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy. Always getting their maximum bonus to their damage dice.
Now, I will say level dip into Ranger, well, maybe not one level, but dipping into Ranger, you can work up to Colossus Slayer, which will just add a D8 to all your attacks.
Once something's injured.
It's a great way to get gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with us.
So when building a damage-dealing character, there's several categories we're going to look at, right? We're going to look at...
So class, spells, feats.
Yeah, different options that are going to give us the best average damage, essentially.
So where do we want to go first?
You're going to either do that damage by hitting a lot of times or hitting hard are kind of your options. I think our front runners for class are going to be like Paladin, Barbarian, Battle. Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, 4 nerds, by nerds, hanging out with all these nerds.
Ted.
Nathan Nerdarch.
Ryan.
And today we discuss 3 ways to hit them harder.
Hey guys, jump down to the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the News Letter.
Master, Rogue, characters that you get to put down a lot of dice.
Fighters, And I would even give an honorable mention to Monk because their flurry of blows, or even just their offhand attack, like they're never considered having an offhand attack. So they're